Okay, go for it.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for being so patient and sitting through all those presentations. So we're Group 6 and we were tasked with looking at, I probably should say personal health data and the objective self. And before we get into things, the purpose of this slide is mainly just to show you what a good experience we had this week. We, despite our disciplinary differences, we had some really good conversations, and every day we were all really engaged and used every possible space in the room. So we were wondering about health interventions, and some of you probably heard me going on about last week how heart disease is a major global problem. And so we wanted to look at how health intervention apps, could change prevention for heart disease.
So we had a bit of a different experience with the data that we had, and we were really interested in prevention apps, so sort of detecting disease early and preventing it, ideally. So we were the information we had ideally would have been sort of disease information data as well as exercise data, but we only had access to the exercise data. But as you can see, we were such a big team and we had such different experiences. We thought it'd be really good to have two research objectives. First of all, to investigate the sensors that you require to detect heart disease, define events, propose a model for event co-occurrence measurement without the disease data. And then because of our experience, we also wanted to look at why we can't get access to the data and how we can improve that situation so that we can work towards developing a model. So the second objective we had was to identify relevant stakeholders. We also wanted to look at their motivations for access to this data. We also wanted to look at how the diffusion of the technology in society and the barriers and the drivers which might affect this. And then for people who are making individual decisions about whether to share their data with us to make the model better, we wanted to look at the risk and the benefits to both stakeholders and individuals.
Okay, so I will talk about our data that we were provided a little bit later. As you just said, we decided to go into the theoretical part since it's a very young research topic. Many labs are focused on what sensors they want to buy, what to incorporate to do research in this direction. So we decided to cover this as well. So we first look in the market and to see what sensors we can have. And we realized that most of available wearable devices for personal sensor data contain these four sensors. It's the oxygen, temperature, heart rate, GPS, and accelerometer. While it's very interesting to incorporate another two, which are very related to disease. First is blood pressure. Second one is sugar level in blood. These four sensors are available. This one just come up, so it will come very soon in the market. Research can be done in this. This one, many startups are working on it, but they still didn't find a way how to do it without getting access to your blood. So we divided our sensors in three categories. First, the static sensors. Is the sensors from which we cannot directly infer any health status of a patient, but which is very important for us to understand, which are important for us as support for other sensors. For example, GPS provide us a location, so we can know the location of a patient and we can know the air pollution if we have available external sensors for it. The accelerometer sensor itself also not very related to health care and not very related to wellness, but there are a lot of research done about activity prediction from the accelerometer data, and with a background of certain activity, we can make conclusions about raw sensor data, so we can extract events from the data. The oxygen sensor is very related to environment and to user profile. When we do our research, we realize that environmental information and also demographic and user profile information is very important to make conclusions about oxygen level. Finally, it can be used for asthma disease prediction and for other chronic disease. Another most popular one is a heart rate sensor, which actually can be divided in two categories. One is ordinary heart rate sensor from wearable devices, and it gives us just the beats per minute with a very low sampling rate. Another one is ECG, which is available for both for chest straps and is more popular among athletes or in the hospitals. From heart rate sensor itself, we cannot infer any knowledge. That's why we need pollution data, we need accelerometer, which is activity, and user profile data to make any assumptions about the health status of the person and to detect events from these sensors. So if we browse medical literature, we can see that there are various tables that tell us that for different age, for example, and gender, the norm of heart rate differs a lot. So heart rate itself cannot give us too much, cannot give us a reason to conclude anything without support of other sensors. The same thing about blood pressure. Accelerometer and pollution is very important, and if we know this information, we can detect hypertony, we can detect people who have tend to have a low blood pressure, or we can make assumptions that there is no any event happen in this. User profile also very important. It's the demographic data, it's age, gender, and it's even interest and even a personality. So another sensor is body temperature, and here we have the same thing. So from all these sensors, we want to think that one of the main conclusions that we made is that it's impossible to make any conclusion from just a raw sensor data. It's very important to consider sensors in an environment of the activity, of the profile, of the external pollution. Only in this case we can define and we can detect any events that happen from a sensor data. So, okay. One more sensor for us is a social media sensor, and we can see, we can infer demographic profile and social events. So this is our definition and relations. I will go through because we don't have too much time. I'll explain it already. So basically, we can say that our events, in fact, will consist, will be extracted only in an environment of the demographic information and with the environment of activity information. We can see that from the raw data, we can extract these events, but another conclusion that we cannot find events co-occurrences based on the same temperature period like it was proposed in models during the keynotes. Because, for example, some social events may affect our future days, while some heart rate events will take immediate effect in the following minutes. So this is our model that we propose to measure co-occurrence in case of if we have available sensors and available data from these sensors. Our data set consists of 60 walk hours from athletes, and we have heart rate, GPS, and some limited user profile as body weight can be inferred from the calorie spent and some other information. Also, we have some external data, which is weather, humidity level, and some wind level for some of these records. We wish we can have a connection with social sensors, but we didn't find a way how to make this connection because all our participants that their sensor data was collected, they're anonymized, and we don't have any relation data, any health relation data about these users as well. At the same time, if we do some correlation analysis, some typical correlation analysis based on some statistics that we extract from data, we can see some conclusions. For example, we burn more calories during the windy weather, or if you don't train consistently, less we will have less stable heart rate. And some other relations, you can see that from correlation matrix is quite colorful. So from here, we can conclude that from our limited data, we cannot make any big conclusions, but we can say that, yes, a multi-source data, it makes sense. And in case if we will have multi-source data from multiple sources, from social media, from sensor data, we further can make much bigger conclusions about the whole data. Here we list all things we wish we can have in our data set in future, and all future research may consider these sensors and these features to solve. So,
Okay. I know we don't have very long left, so I have to go through this really quickly. But we did do a lot of work on the social stuff as well, which obviously has a massive impact in how well this technology works. And we did a lot of work on the drivers and barriers, and we also chose to identify the relevant stakeholders, so why they'd want access to the data or what they would do with it, and the risk and benefits this had for the stakeholders themselves and the individuals that would use the health data. So this is a table we created about the drivers and barriers. Obviously, I don't have time to talk you through it now, but obviously these guys will have a massive impact on how this technology diffuses. And maybe if you want to take a closer look at that, you could contact us for the slides later. And then, do you want to run first?
Like I say, whistle-stop tour again, but we basically identified the 5 major stakeholders would be the individual, the researchers, the healthcare providers, the government, and commercial companies. They all have different motivations, and depending on the things Amy talked about, the barriers, would depend on who can have access to this data anyway. But there's a number of benefits and risks to both the individual and the stakeholder. So, you know, if I don't share my data, if I have my data only myself, my privacy may be high, but I might not be able to understand the data or make use of it. So we really need to think about balancing the two, making a cost-benefit analysis so it can benefit the most people and make an efficient model.
Right. And since we ran out of whiteboards too, right? We thought it was fair to have like a share. We need to share a common working ground to map all those questions we've been asking. So since we're interested in making an end product, finished product, I think it was fair for us to map those questions to a marketing process. So, but it has become so big, so we couldn't fit in on a single slide. I'll walk you through it. It's sequential. It will start from market research to the evaluation of the marketing efforts, and it covers the whole marketing process. We didn't want to miss any bit. So we try to map as many questions as possible to those nodes. And it could go really deep. For example, if you're interested in HCI, you could go 7 layers deep to ask the question, is the app tutorial simple and easy? Or if you're interested in developing a model just like we did, you could also go down 7 layers and ask, how can you use body temperature sensor for detecting potential risks? And it's also interesting in that we could ask the same question from different view. Is a segment worth retaining? Should we keep the part of the population as a target for our app? Because is it lucrative as a commercial point of view, or is it really ethical to leave those people behind? So it's an interesting finding and an interesting workspace to share with you all. All right.
I promise this is our conclusion now. So obviously we've got a lot of recommendations about what sensor types you might want to use. Obviously need a lot of multiple sources, and this obviously has massive social implications. And obviously this is a very circular thing here, so the people need to produce the data which trains the model, which creates more data which will impact the people, and this thing just goes round and round. And the people making the technology need to be very aware of this and can make good use of social scientists. So thank you. Sorry that took so long.